On two quiet mornings in August 1945, the world changed forever. This film is a journey into the heart of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, not just the devastation, but the stories of those who survived. Through rare, colorized images and the memories they carry, we honor the past, reflect on the cost of war, and remember the lives caught beneath the mushroom cloud. This is not history to be studied, it is humanity to be felt. On the morning of August 6, 1945, the world crossed a threshold from which it would never return. At precisely 8:15 a.m., the first atomic bomb used in warfare was dropped on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. A city of over 300,000 souls, children walking to school, shopkeepers preparing for another day, families gathered around morning meals, was consumed by a single flash of light. In a moment, more than 70,000 people were dead. Tens of thousands more would die in the hours, days, and years that followed, from burns, radiation, and a silence that no one could understand. The bomb, nicknamed Little Boy, did not distinguish between soldier and civilian, between child and elder. It erased lives, buildings, and memories in a single blinding instant. 3 days later, on August 9th, a second bomb, this one called Fat Man, was dropped on Nagasaki. Though the mountainous terrain lessened the destruction compared to Hiroshima, the human toll remained incomprehensible. Another 40,000 people died instantly. Many of the victims were factory workers, students, and those seeking shelter from the ongoing war. Nagasaki's historic churches, temples, and neighborhoods vanished beneath the mushroom cloud. What followed was not only destruction, but unimaginable suffering. Burned victims with charred flesh walked like shadows. Survivors searched for family members among mountains of ash. Water, the very source of life, became deadly with radiation. Children were orphaned. Whole generations were scarred, not just physically, but spiritually and culturally. The bombings did not just mark the end of World War II. They marked the beginning of the nuclear age, a world where humanity held the power to annihilate itself. The shockwaves from Hiroshima and Nagasaki reached every corner of the globe. They inspired both scientific ambition and existential dread, and they forced the world to ask, how far are we willing to go in the name of victory? But amidst the ruins, voices endured. Survivors, known as hibakusha, refused to be defined solely by tragedy. They became the keepers of memory, warning future generations of the cost of war and the fragile value of peace. Many bore their scars in silence. Others turned pain into testimony, speaking not out of hatred, but out of hope, that no one anywhere would suffer what they did. Hiroshima and Nagasaki are not only stories of devastation, they are reminders. Reminders of what we are capable of doing to one another, and also of what we must never allow again. In the weeks that followed the bombings, the world tried to grasp what had happened. But how does one explain a silence so deep it feels like the end of time? Survivors described a rain that fell black from the sky, coating their wounds with radioactive ash. Buildings that had stood for centuries vanished. Rivers swelled with the dead. The cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were reduced to nothing but shadow and fire. Doctors and nurses, themselves injured, worked until collapse. They had no real medicine for the injuries radiation left behind. Wounds that reopened without reason, hair that fell like dust, blood that would not clot. For the first time in history, humanity witnessed the invisible damage of atomic energy, not just in the moment of impact, but in the years that followed. Leukemia, cancers, miscarriages, these would haunt survivors and their children long after the last flames were extinguished. And yet, even in this wasteland, life stirred. Some survivors returned to the ruins to rebuild. Makeshift schools opened under open skies. People planted gardens in soil they weren't sure was safe. Parents told bedtime stories with tears in their eyes, trying to protect their children from a fear they could not name. They chose hope, not because they believed the world would be fair, but because the alternative, giving in to despair, was not acceptable. The world reacted slowly. News of the bomb's destruction was censored at first, tightly controlled. Photographs were banned, eyewitness accounts were buried. But truth, like light, cannot be contained forever. When the images emerged, burned children, skeletal cities, twisted steel, the conscience of humanity was shaken. The bomb had won the war, they were told, But at what cost? Scientists who had helped build the bomb, including members of the Manhattan Project, spoke out with regret. One said, "Now we are all sons of bitches." Others warned, this was not a victory, but a warning. If nations continued down this path, it would not be two cities next time. It would be all cities, all people. From Hiroshima and Nagasaki, peace movements were born. Survivors traveled the world, not to accuse, but to educate. They visited schools, parliaments, and international courts. They spoke of burning skin, of lost siblings, of memories etched into bone. And through those stories, they taught a lesson that no textbook could hold. That peace is not a concept, it is a choice made every day. These cities, once annihilated, became symbols of resilience. They rebuilt stone by stone. They planted trees where the earth had blistered. They erected memorials, not of anger, but of remembrance. And they invited the world to visit, not to see tragedy, but to witness how love can grow from ash. Hiroshima and Nagasaki stand not only as cities, but as living testaments. They are more than the first places targeted by atomic weapons. They are places where the world was asked to remember and to choose a different path. Every August, bells ring through Hiroshima's Peace Memorial Park. Thousands gather in silence, laying paper lanterns into the Motoyasu River. Each lantern carries a name, a memory, a prayer. Children who never met their grandparents float messages of peace on rippling water, their small hands doing the work of remembrance that spans generations. In Nagasaki, the same quiet grief lives in the cracks of stone churches and in the shadows of school walls. The peace statue in Nagasaki's Memorial Park raises one hand to the sky, a warning, and the other outstretched as a symbol of calm. Its eyes are closed in silent prayer. Around it, survivors gather to tell stories, not to relive pain, but to pass on wisdom. The hibakusha, the survivors of the bombings, are growing fewer every year. Their bodies age, their voices weaken, but their stories have never been more important. They remind us that peace is not guaranteed, that silence, when born of apathy, becomes complicity, and that remembering is a responsibility. It is easy to speak of progress, easy to admire the technology we've built since 1945. But the truth is, the weapons created in the decades that followed are far more powerful than those dropped on Japan. Thousands of warheads exist today, many capable of destroying entire continents. And yet, the lesson from Hiroshima and Nagasaki remains painfully simple. One bomb was too many. These events must not be confined to textbooks or memorial plaques. They must live in our minds, in our decisions, in our compassion. They are not relics of the past. They are warnings for the future. And so, as you witness these images, colorized, brought to life through motion and memory, remember that behind every photograph was a life. A mother searching for her child. A boy wondering why his skin no longer feels like skin. A teacher who survived when her entire class did not. A city that chose against every reason to rebuild. We must remember Hiroshima and Nagasaki not only for what was lost, but for what remains. The capacity for change, the courage to speak truth, and the hope that someday war will no longer be the answer. Let this not be just a history lesson. Let it be a promise. The ruins have been rebuilt. The rivers flow clear. The cities pulse with life once more. But Hiroshima and Nagasaki are not just places on a map. They are reminders carved into the soul of humanity. What happened in August 1945 cannot be undone, but it can be remembered. It must be remembered, not to reopen wounds, but to keep them from forming again. Not to blame, but to understand. The survivors, the hibakusha, have carried this burden for decades, not with vengeance, but with grace. They turn silence into stories, suffering into warnings, memory into mission. And now, as their voices begin to fade with age, it is up to us to listen more closely than ever before. The images you have just seen are not fiction. They are real lives caught in the fire of war. They are history made personal. Their colors, restored through technology, cannot bring back the lives, but they can bring back the empathy. May we walk away not only with knowledge, but with responsibility. A responsibility to choose peace in a world that still flirts with destruction. a responsibility to honor those who were lost, not by mourning forever, but by making sure their story shapes our future. Because remembering is not just about the past, it's about protecting what comes next. The past is not forgotten. It lives again through these stories, these images, and these voices. Thank you for joining us in History Gets Alive. Until next time, keep remembering, keep reflecting, and don't forget to subscribe our channel.